Halt podcast. Let's go.
You're dealing with an expert in guerrilla warfare. With a man who's the best. With guns, with knives, with his bare hands. A man who's been trained to ignore pain, ignore weather, to live off the land. His job was to dispose of enemy personnel. To kill. Period. Win by attrition.
Yeah, there we go. Always like to start off, just record it and then kind of naturally segue into like that whole introduction. Dude, thank you so much for being here. I'm always looking for individuals to have real authentic stories. Our civilian counterparts and even some of our military members think that success is something that just happened naturally. You always succeed. You always have a great plan of action and always execute it flawlessly. And that's just, that's just the way the world works. And that's not the truth
at all.
A lot of us have tasted failure, and not just once, but multiple times. And resilience is being able to build up on those failures, being able to succeed again, being able to get back up, dust yourself off. And that's why I really think your story needs to be amplified and more people need to hear it, because the reality is the reason why we're able to accomplish such great things as soft professionals, because we're intimately with how failure feels, whether it's on the field as an athlete or during a mission, being able to bounce back. And that's something that our brothers and sisters on the outside, they're kind of losing that. The work culture doesn't really embrace the ability to hey, get back up. The report didn't go well. The board meeting, you didn't do well on that project. And I'm seeing it now, like being able to go and speak at events and people realize how is it that you were able to fail? How do we rebuild that in that culture? I'm like, holy cow, we need to bring it in. We need to talk about this, because it's not about just losing steam if you fail. It's like, all right, do it again. Don't just crucify the people. Don't just, if they fail once, get rid of them, give them the ability to adapt and recover and then try again. Give them another big shot, another opportunity. Because that's how all of us were able to make it in the teams. So thank you for being here, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I go speak at the students at USC, for one of the first things I tell them is hey, give yourself permission to fail.
Yeah.
And they look around, they're just like, what? I mean, they're all high achievers, right? Academically.
Yep.
And it's like, hey, you're going to screw this up. And they're like, no. I was like, so if you go in, it's like, I won't fail. I'm like, brother, it's gonna be ugly sometimes. You're going to feel incompetent, consciously incompetent sometimes. I feel when I'm starting something new, which means I suck and I know it.
Yeah. But there's a beauty in that. It's because otherwise you're just that guy that's just like, I'm perfect.
Right.
There's no way I can fail. It's like, no, going back to school, that's a scary thing to do. And it's like, well, wait a second. Okay, I don't know everything. I'm going to stumble. I'm going to have to find resources, but I've been here before. I've been a beginner before. Being a constant student is a great approach to life. And we kind of forget to go back to that mentality. And it's not really promoted.
Yeah, that was it. I think that was one of the best wake up calls for me, is because, while I was active duty, I got to go to grad school and earn an MBA. And then I was like, grad school stuff's not so bad. And then I went to a top 20 university, and I was like, oh, okay, this is different.
Okay, here's that curve.
Okay, right, I get it. This is hard.
Well, Mark Greene, welcome to Security Out Podcast. Today, it's all about you, my man. It's all about you and sharing your story, as our audience from Patreon has been able to hear sort of the beginning ramblings and beginning introduction talks. Mark, you're somebody that has succeeded and failed and succeeded again and lived to succeed. And your story helps us understand that even if we fall down, we still have the opportunity and the commitment to get back up and try again. So thank you for being here, brother. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. I think it's because in order for us to succeed at a high level, somebody's always better. You're always failing. And the expectation is to, well, hey, stupid, get up and do it again. That sucks. So
that's so true.
Yeah. And generation I came from, my grandfathers were put some dirt on it, and not finishing something was not even an option. And no matter how you felt, like, well, boy, get on up. What are you doing? What are you looking at me for? So so I took that mentality. Luckily, my upbringing introduced that really early, and first 9 years old, getting ready to play go to my first football practice. And I was like, Dad, this is football. And he's like, hey, boy, we're gonna have our first talk. He's like, in the Greene family, once we start something, you're finishing it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what happens, broken leg, broken whatever, unless you're unable, like as in on your deathbed, you're finishing what you start. So sometimes I start stuff that I don't want to do, just because once I start it, I'm committed to it.
Yeah.
So when I embarked on my journey into the SEAL community, once I showed up at the training center, hey, you're gonna quit didn't even cross my mind. I knew I was overwhelmed when I got there. I was like, shit, this is bad.
I think that's everybody, regardless of whether you're going to, trying to become a MARSOC Raider, a Green Beret, Navy SEAL, or joining Ranger Regiment. Once you show up, like, you have to have that attitude of like, all right, like, the only way out of this is through a body bag.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to be me that makes that decision. Somebody else is going to tell me that I don't belong here. I'm going to keep going until there's.
Yeah. Sometimes people, you show up the next morning, like, God, what are you still doing here?
Yeah. Cadre have a way of making you feel like, oh, fuck, man. Like, take the air out of your sails.
Yeah. Remember around Rob Schneider and I think Waterboy, like, we suck again.
Yes.
That's how I felt sometimes, but I always figured out a way to maximize the good in what I was going through, be it school, hell week, being a parent, everything's just like, well, it didn't totally suck,
There's some good in there.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to the sports, because that's something that I feel a lot of us that have been successful, we can connect back to those early days of practice, of putting in the work, of doing the hard things that not a lot of people wanted to do. It's kind of hard to, get up at 4 a.m. as a teenager to like get to practice, to do the extra work. When you look back at life, all those lessons, can you trace it all back to sports? Like, where was that first, like, no quit attitude being like cultivated in you? Obviously fathers, but where else?
So fathers, and, I had so many men in my life. My dad was around my whole time. I had grandfathers, uncles. There's men everywhere, and they just held your feet to the fire. And if you messed up, back in the day, you can little capital punishment. A little tune-up. And
dude, I'm so glad you said that. Like,
it's like tune-up was, that was real. So
I've it's all anecdotal. This is just me gathering information from having these great, authentic talks with individuals. But for those of us that didn't have that positive male role model, or multiple male role models in our lives, we had to like figure that out and look for it elsewhere. And one of the key figures that you find that in were coaches.
Yeah.
Like, if you didn't have it at home, if the person, if A, there wasn't a dad, and B, like, or the person at home that is the father figure is not a good figure at all.
Yeah.
You at least had the coaches. And we're living in a day where, we promote the idea that men are necessary, that fathers aren't necessary. But I'm like, no, I know a lot of good teammates who did come from good homes, that did have real father figures. And that was a different individual. That was a different beast. Like, we all succeeded, we all crushed things, but they had a frame of reference of what that standard was. And it's the rest of us, we're trying to like just figure it out. Like maybe we looked up the squad leader, or we had that coach that was just always good. So that's definitely like one of the positive things from your story is like the understanding that like, dude, fathers make a difference. Uncles, grandfathers, positive male role models are needed.
Scariest thing I've ever heard when I was young. It's like, wait till your father gets home. He's like, oof. and then that's after your grandfather tuned you up. You're just like, man, I heard that one. And it was coming. You earned it. So once Pop showed up, it's like, yeah, I get it. And
yeah,
but the thing about that was the consistency of it.
yeah,
Right. Like my dad, even though he's in the Air Force, he got home same time every day. Got home a little bit grumpy, so we had to give Dad a space. And then once he settled in, everything was fine. But it's just when he walks in the door, it's just like, all right, Dad's home, and just make sure everything's squared away. So
chores are done, homework's done.
Yeah, and so that was it, and it was more of a community. Like even teachers, there are a lot more male teachers when we were young, and it was just a lot of influence. So it was really not wanting to disappoint people who relied on you. And as a kid, my dad relied on me to be a good kid, and that really went a long way, just having the dad around. But I didn't know it at the time. It was just like, Dad again. But as I got older and had my own kids, it's like, okay, I get it.
Yeah. That's one of the things with like some of the most important lessons in life. In the moment, you don't realize that you're living something that's going to be so crucial and so essential to how you function as an adult. You're just like, oh gosh, don't want to upset Dad, or man, like he's really harping on me. But then later on in life, you realize like, oh, wait a second. This is important. This is vital. Men without this go their entire life searching for it and reading books about it. And you had it at home.
And it was just that, that consistency. And the coolest thing was my dad never missed a practice, never missed a game. And as whatever sporting event, and he sat in the same place every time. So all I had to do was look up and say, okay. And when I saw him there, I was just like, okay, everything's good. Pops is here, and as
that's
I
awesome.
had my own kids, I always had a red hat.
Nice.
So whenever I went to a sporting event, red hat came on. So, and just to watch my kids searching around and they just see the red hat and you just watch them like, okay, Dad's here. Everything's good. And I tried to never miss a practice and try not to miss games. And, with our job and op tempo, you're not going to be able to make everything. Yep. But my kids always remember red hat.
Dude, that's powerful.
Always a red hat.
Damn. What was it like telling your dad about how much of an impact that was?
I didn't get a chance because he died really young. And like fathers and sons, you have a rift that happens.
Yeah.
And you don't understand the decision-making process and piss each other off. And all of a sudden, you're on your third deployment and haven't really sat down and talked with Pops for a while. But as he was, his cancer came back and it was terminal. And I was teaching at the sniper school. I'm from Ohio, and the sniper school at Indiana. So as he was, terminal, I could just drive home instead of driving 12 hours from Virginia. I could just hop in the car on Friday night after work and go hang out with Dad for the weekend. And it just, you had to make a conscious decision. Like, okay, am I going to hold on to this? Or am I going to say, hey, you know what? I don't have time. Like, I'm literally on the clock. And every time I came home, we looked worse. And I just made that decision. It's like, hey, man, this is not worth it because, you only have 6 months left with them. And then all of a sudden you have 5 months left. And then you're in the room when he passes. So I got a chance to reconnect and redeem that relationship. But one of the coolest things about as my father was terminal, lost his leg, multiple complications. The cancer was just eating him up, right? I never heard the man complain once. Not one time.
Damn.
He did not feel so. I mean, I'm sure he felt sorry for him, but it never showed. And
No.
I was just like, well, okay, well. And then that taught me as at 30 something, I was like, if he's going through this and he's not going to complain, so guess what? You don't get to complain about my TPS reports not being done the right way.
Your DTS was screwed up. You got to come back and fix it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That was a different era of man. And I've talked to a lot of guys that did have those father figures that were rough cut men that you knew they loved you.
Mhm.
You knew that they cared for you. They were hard. They were disciplined. But they didn't complain about pain. They didn't complain about the inconvenience of having to work those long shifts because they knew the benefit of bringing that money, of providing for their sons, for their daughters, for their family. And that's something that we're losing. We're losing that era of strong men. And we ourselves, military members, we can help bring that out at other people by engaging, by talking about what it means to persevere, what it means to be resilient. Because sometimes you just have to. And look, I'm a big champion of mental health. That's one of the main pillars of this show.
Yeah.
But when it comes to doing the work, you have to boot up, lace up, find your grit and get it done and do it and be okay with it. It's not going to be pretty. Not all of us are going to be able to have that ability to whine and complain because, hey, guess what? The mission is feed your kids, put food on the table. That's what you got to do. You got to be able to get up and do the work. And we're losing those men. We're losing that grit. But that's something that we can teach. We can coach that. It's something we can bring.
Yeah, and it's and the kids are not in those formative years, not getting that.
Yeah.
So if we reach them, we're reaching them from infancy, basically, at a teenager or young adult. This is the first time they could have had a consistent father figure or strong man, and just they're in shock a lot of times. But it's appreciated. My grandfather, just a huge man, right? And he didn't say a whole lot. And when he had his throne in the front room. So if he was in there, like, we didn't make eye contact, we just ran right past. So when he sat me down to want me to play baseball, like, boy, come over here. So I sat down. I didn't even think the guy liked me, But I found out. I mean, he was a really good guy, but he was just he's just an old salt, But his pride was he had so much pride internally, and he just knew he just had to be the hammer sometimes. But once you got past that, like, hard outer shell, it was just a big old goop on the middle. Yeah.
And that's all of us. That's all of us have yet to meet a soft professional, or even, the MOSs are going out there to fight. Infantry guys, we're all the same. You go through a hellacious firefight or going through a village, and then you see a kid, and instantly you see the humanity in every single one of the hardest dudes ever, the most bearded up, tattooed guys. You put them in a situation where a little kid that has nothing comes up to them and tugs on their jacket or pants sleeve and, like, wants a little bit of something to eat or some food. All of them just crumble into just the softest individuals. And that's something that people harp on, toxic masculinity. Like, no, masculinity is a powerful thing.
Yeah.
And it is something that we need to celebrate, because masculinity there's also a part of it that says, like, hey, I can be kind, I can be generous, I can be helpful. It's not about just, laying down hate and shooting machine guns and getting into firefights. No, there's a component of masculinity that says, hey, I can be kind, I can take care of others, I can take care of those that are weak and need defending. And that's a beautiful aspect of seeing those strong male figures in your life when they are able to show that kindness and playfulness. You're like, oh, that's being a man. That's part of it too.
Yeah. One of the coolest things I remember seeing was old school boxers, right? I mean, they just
Yeah.
beating each other up for 15 rounds. And at the end of it, hey, let's hug it out. That was a good fight.
Yeah.
And the first time I saw it, I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. You guys are just trying to beat the hell out of each other. And then at the end of it, it's like, hey, man, it's a good fight.
Yeah.
And then watching MMA now, it's a different level of fighting and all the build up. And I mean, they're just getting after it. And then after the fight, so much respect between men. So when the whole toxic masculinity trope came about, I'm like, I don't. It's a conversation stopper.
Yes.
It's like I hate the whole racism points because that just stops the conversation. Yep. Like, well, you're a racist, and then the defense is everybody's on defense, and you stop talking. So, so when I hear stuff like that, I'm like, well, I'm willing to have a conversation about anything. I may not agree with you, but I think the masculine thing is like, okay, we may not agree, and we may argue with each other, but at the end of it, usually there's no hard feelings. And my chief, when I did my officer in charge, he and I didn't agree a lot, and behind closed doors, we'd get pretty heated.
Yeah.
But at the end, it was like, all right, man, let's hug it out. And
yes.
Then,
it's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we're losing. I don't think we've lost it completely. We're losing the ability to engage in civil discourse in open forums. Mm-hmm. Like if you try to do it on social media, it doesn't work. Yeah. If you bring a counterpoint, people are just like, well, you're a racist. Well, actually, I'm an immigrant. I'm Panamanian. So, I mean, like, I win this in your rules. With your rules, I win. So, but it's one of those things where people don't want to have the conversations and just understand that we can disagree.
Yeah.
We can have understandings. We don't have to be at each other's throats. But you're right. That as soon as it's toxic masculinity, I'm like, no, because masculinity has saved thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. It's the reason why that firefighter runs into that fire to save people. It's the reason why a lot of us do stupid gun-ho things in the middle of a firefight just for that 1% chance that we'll get it right and we'll be able to save somebody.
Yeah.
And it's needed. It's one of those things where when you learn it from a family figure, it's the most beautiful thing that you can hope for. And that's why we have to champion like being able to make dads great again. Mm-hmm. Like, it's such an important role.
Yeah.
It's like our roles of being professionals don't just end when we hang up the uniform, when we leave the teams, when we leave regiment. No, now you get to be the leader of your home 100%. You get to be the man that's around, and you get to teach all the great things that you learned, because you might not need to teach your kids how to be members of an effective fire team, but all the responsibility, all the things that you learn on how to be a great, effective leader, pass it down to your kids, to your community, to the people that live around you. Like, those are still viable things that need to be taught, and they're just kind of not around. I've noticed it. I've seen it. And all it takes is just being able to engage with your everyday, community member. And it's just being able to have that discourse, which is kind of like I said, it's not vanished, but it's going away.
Yeah. And the way I try to teach my kids is through example, right? So, I 4 days a week, I go to the gym 4 days a week, do yoga on Saturdays, or I'll be pissed off. And I was like, Dad, what's the matter? I'm doing a cleanse. And like, why are you doing that? I was like, I need to infuse some discipline just to get back on track. So then my kids are like, oh, Dad's going to the gym, even though he's limping around, he's going to get it done. Or he wakes up the same time every day just because. And as soon as they walk through the door, it's like magic, man. I'm so happy to see my kids every day.
Yeah.
And but it's being consistent. They know what they're going to get with Dad every time he shows up, And so then It's like, hey, what time is it? What time are you supposed to be home? Oh, okay. And this is small stuff like my daughter, um, overdrank when she was too young and living in Germany
Yeah.
and just absolutely miserable, right? And in tears and stuff. And my ex is yelling at her and stuff. And so I knock on the door and walk in. I was like, hey, like, what is it? I was like, did you learn something? She's like, yeah. I was like, what else am I going to teach her?
Yeah. Perfect lesson.
Yeah, that pain and suffering is going to do much more than anything I could do. I was like, and she just suffered through it. It's like, all right, lesson learned.
Oh man. Dude. Now, MBAs are something that are championed through the military, especially in the soft community.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of us, like it can seem really daunting. When you took up that challenge, how was it for you? Did you think immediately like, okay, like this is going to be easy? And then to follow that up with more school, like how did you first, like, what was the catalyst for it? And how was it when you were actually going through it?
Okay. So I was pretty much op tempo was from 97 until 97 07 was pretty much nonstop.
Yeah.
So we talked to the detailer, the people who give us our next jobs. I was like, Margaret, I need a break. I was like, I heard there's this graduate program you can go to. She's like, oh yeah, that'll be great. So I was going to go to the Kumbaya course, the Solit course, right? And read and Kumbaya with my fellow soft brothers. And she said, well, how many kids do you have? I was like, I have 3. I was like, I really need to connect with them. She's like, okay, well, I'm going to send you to get your MBA. I'm like, no, you're not. And I was like, I flunked out of college. What are you talking about? There's math and stuff. I was like, I'm not doing that. She's like,
so it wasn't something you embraced with open arms.
No, she said, well, I want you to have a job to take care of all those damn kids. So the best thing to do is send you to get your MBA. And it was like a non-negotiable. So, and I pleaded with her. I was like, please. She's like, and she's like, honey, I've already put it in. You're done. I was just like,
oh, this ship sailed.
Yeah. So I show up and I was never good at the garbage in, garbage out of academics because I could never figure out what was important. So everything was important. So I really struggled, but I'm like, okay, I have to dedicate time to like learn this stuff at the graduate level because economics and statistics and all the stuff of business, learning it for the first time at that level. I was just like, man, I was just trying to tread water to stay above, keep my head above. But I would bug all the professors. I went to all the office hours. I was like, okay, how do I figure this thing out? And so slowly I made it through the garbage in, garbage out, which is half the curriculum. But the second half was analytics, right? You get a case study and you just have to analyze it and pick it apart and come up with a solution, which in our community we do all the time.
Yep.
So once
wargaming it.
Yeah. So once it came to that, I really thrived. And but it sucked. I mean, it sucked. The first 9 months of that 18-month course, I was like, bro.
Yeah.
But then
it's not an easy thing. From everybody that I've talked to. It's not something that you can just cakewalk. And the military schools already do a really good job of showing you what it's like to go through, a fire hose session. Every school you will go to, if there's academics involved, it's like a sprint and it's just data dump every single day. And it's just like, oh my God. But now you're doing it with individuals that have a master's degree in just throwing data and information at you nonstop. And you got to decipher it all in such a fast rate. Like that's insane.
Yeah. So with grad school, it's really it's a networking event. right? So you come in with this cohort, you do everything as a team, and you learn the language of business, and you learn you don't have to learn the leadership part because we already had that. So now you're just learning how do I speak this language? And if somebody says XYZ in the business world, I know what that means.
Yeah.
Right. So I have the basics of every aspect of business. And then it's just a selection course, really. And it's what you have to do to kind of pay your dues to, climb the corporate ladder, because corporations are set up, or the military is set up as a corporation, really. Doesn't have to pass audits, but
we're seeing that now.
Yeah.
I mean, well, we should clarify. We have to pass audits.
Yeah, but DoD in general, no, you did. But,
no.
So, and really, what it is, so after you get out and you start to climb the military corporate ladder, like, hey, I went to Naval Postgraduate School with Dave, and I need a favor. And you just reach out and say, hey, Dave, we were in the same cohort. And it's just like your class you graduated with. Somebody can call me from 20 years ago and said, hey, Mark, it's so-and-so from 212. I need a favor. And it's like, oh, I got a guy, so it just broadens your aperture to succeed in the business world. So, but realistically, you're taking one class in every discipline. So you're not really a master at anything, but the capstone is to do a thesis. So even though I flunked out of college the first time and struggled through the first parts of grad school, I ended up getting an outstanding thesis award.
No way.
As I graduated, yeah. So all that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I just dug in and said, all right, I'm going to suck at this and parts of it, but some parts I'm going to excel at, and then take lessons learned from what you're struggling with, and then refine that as you move forward. So then by the end of it, you're this kind of full-fledged student who can really think through problems in ways that you didn't think before. And I think as a soft community, we have an advantage of that, because bread and butter is just to kind of figure it out. And, you case study or situation. And as you enter the house or the room or whatever you're doing, Mike Tyson said it best. It's like, everyone's got a plan. You get punched in the face, and
then you have to improvise. Then you have to adapt.
So we're doing analytics all the time. So when it came to that part, I could really incorporate it. But then, I just kind of found my leadership style through my enlisted time, and then officer candidate school, and then leading my own group of guys. So by the time I got to my officer in charge, I had my process down, and I knew what I wanted to achieve. And it really just came down to take care of your guys. And as the officer, hated, like, you're not supposed to take care of the enlisted. I'm like, okay, yes, sir. And, salute and yes, sir, won't happen again. And then go back. Never do it.
It's something changes. Something, I remember when I made the decision to become a warrant officer, it wasn't because like, oh yeah, I'm looking to just make a career out of this. I'm going to make money. Because you really don't. Right. Actually, fun fact, you take a pay cut for that first year, and they will tell you there's a bonus. The bonus never comes. It never gets there. But you become a leader in SOF because you want to take care of the guys, because you either see a leader that made an impression on you and you realize, like, I want to be like that guy. What he did for the team, I want to be able to replicate it. And then when you get there, you realize that the human factor is the most important thing in SOF. They'll forget every other attribute, especially right now. The money doesn't matter. The high tech doesn't matter. The sexy missions, none of that matters. What matters are the human beings in that room that will look up to you and say, like, that's my leader. Like, when you have that responsibility, you just want to make sure that the guys that are there get the best training, get put in the best position to succeed in their mission. And then that's ultimately what you get that satisfaction from when it's all said and done after the the long hours of doing con ops and all the horrible administrative chores.
Yeah.
Like when you look back and you realize, okay, all those guys are successful in their mission, they're successful in their training, and they're all going home to their families. Okay, job well done.
Yeah, the best lesson I learned leadership wise, and then I didn't pay attention to this before. My first officer in charge was a prior enlisted guy, and once I told him I was going to be an officer, he's like, "Hey, best lesson I've ever gotten is leadership. It's like once your guys stop coming to you with their problems, then you're failing as a leader." I was like,
Yep.
"Huh." I never even thought about that, but he had a constant line of, "Sir, this is what's going on and this is what's happening." But the leadership that wasn't as strong never went to those guys with their problems. I was
Yep.
like, that's so I always opened myself up to my guys. I was always available, and it was just a constant stream of, "Hey, Mark, I got this going on at the house." And as long as they were coming to me and trusting me with their life, not only their actual life, but their personal life and some of the things they're going through, then I was succeeding. So throughout my entire tour, to the last day I walked out Team 8, guys are still coming to me. I was like, okay, well, then I did it right.
Yeah. It's a powerful thing when you still get contacted, because no matter how long you're out, you're still a leader. You still carry that with you. And if you can continue helping others and still have that mindset of service oriented leadership, you're going to be successful wherever you go.
Mm-hmm.
And that transfers over to every civilian job, every leadership position. Be of service to the people that you work with. And man, there is a lot of value of learning that in the military these days, whether you're non-combat MOS or support MOS or combat MOS. You can learn that leadership ability in the military, and it's still there. So if you're a young person looking for direction, looking for mentorship, looking to learn how to be a good leader, the military is always around, and I still think it's a viable option. I still think that you should probably choose going into a soft profession. That's just my thing. We're always going to need men of action. We're always going to need individuals to fill those roles. And I think for anybody out there struggling to find themselves, take the challenge, man. Take the challenge, whether it's MARSOC, Ranger Regiment, SEALs, Green Beret, or 160th. Take that challenge.
Yeah.
Go for it. Life's short, and I learned how to be a great leader through observing and learning from great leaders and not so great leaders. Mm-hmm. And I am grateful for those opportunities, because you get to see it when it really matters. And there's nothing like good leadership in a firefight when you see it happen.
Yeah.
When you see good leaders in those moments where it matters most, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna be like that guy someday.
Right. Yeah, I learned so much. I think I learned a lot more from poor leadership, because it was like, not going to do that.
Yeah,
that's what's not to do. So I learned so much from the great leaders and the poor leaders, and
and the humble leaders. My first true senior, because I had a lot of mentorship from other 18 Bravos, but the first senior I had was one of those humble leaders. Like he never boasted about himself. He never talked himself up. He never talked about any of his aspirations, all the moves he was going to make. He always took the time to show you the fundamentals, mm-hmm. to always be there with mentorship and guidance. And he said, when you're going to become a leader, like there are 3 things you need to always be looking out for and always trying to achieve. It's like, you're not guaranteed to have all 3, but you should always be trying for all 3. And I was like, that was different, because every other leader that I had was always telling me all these different things to focus on. He's like, no, man, 3 things: tactically proficient, physically fit, and administratively sound. Those 3 things constantly. You may not be blessed with all 3 right off the bat,
mm-hmm.
but you got to be able to demonstrate that you're owning those 3 things. And And he never talked himself as if he was a master of those three, but he was. And that was the most beautiful thing about that that man as a senior leader. Then you finally get to see it. Is shout out to Little Bill. That man walked like a friggin' NFL quarterback anytime he came into the room. Like you just knew, like, okay, like shit, like that's my senior, like that's the dude.
Lost his
But it was
shit.
that humble leadership.
Yeah.
He was just quiet and always had the right thing to say. And I mean, whether it's an administrative thing that I was doing, or it's like, Sarge, you know better than that. It's like, oh yeah, okay, I gotta do right. If Bill's saying I gotta do this the right way, then I'm gonna follow this. But those are the leaders that stay with you, like the individuals that were humble, but they got it right when it mattered. And it was the people that didn't be hovering over his shoulder to get things done, or they didn't. He wasn't never worried about what the man thought or what command was going to like. No, he knew the right things to do, and they mattered. All the little tiny things. And there's a reason why that man was successful, and he is where he is today. But it always stuck out to me. The guys that were always boastful, that always talked about all the great things they did or were going to do. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Never achieved a fraction of the things they talked about,
Right.
and they weren't even a fraction of how they weren't a fraction of how good they said they were. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was good. And when we would go to our shooting school, there's always somebody who's really, really good. And I was never the fastest, right? And they would try to push me to go fast. I was like, look, I'm going as fast as I can be effective, right? I'm going to naturally get better. But if, let's say I push it and rush it, and I'm throwing shots all over, I'm not safe. Like, I was like, I'm putting rounds on paper where they're supposed to go. I'm making the right calls. Am I doing it the fastest? No, but am I able to keep up with the tempo and stay ahead of it? Yeah. And I was like, speed's going to come with more reps. The speed's going to come. But I was really strong on, hey, just stick with the fundamentals and be consistently good fundamentally, and then your skill set's going to improve over time. So by the time we're done with shooting school, my foundation was strong enough to where, I could hang with some of the better shooters.
Yeah, that's a testament to like real training, like useful, purposeful training. You're not going out there to train speed. You're going out there to like master fundamentals.
Mhm.
Speed will come.
Yeah.
Speed will come. But I can't do anything with a guy if he can't group, if he can't zero.
Yeah.
Like those are things like everybody sees a shot timer. That's the first thing they like, oh, I'm going to go shot timer. Like I'm going to go clear the plates. No, screw that. Like, dude, let's get you zeroed. Let's see your grouping. Let's see what you're doing to fundamentals. Like let's do some basic principle drills. Then you work up on speed. That's another thing that I saw just beautifully demonstrated by one of my friends, like one of the best coaches I ever seen when it came to drilling and instructing. And the guy had been doing it for, he's one of those guys from, the more pampered battalion that gets a lot more training and they do more of the sexier missions. And they eventually come back to the line teams. They eventually come back, and watching him teach younger, newer Green Berets how to work that speed was like a masterclass. Like, because he realized after all those years of constantly doing CQB, constantly training, working, you develop the proper way to teach someone. And before you know it, you got brand new guys, brand new Green Berets that are just clearing and doing just stress tests or just crushing it. It's like, okay, that's like a fish in water scenario. That man knows how to teach that. Like, and those professionals, like, we're losing them. Now we're losing those GWAT era professionals, those veterans are slowly transitioning like we have.
Yeah. All the old guys doing podcasts.
Writing books, speaking, and sharing with the rest of the world how to be successful through times of stress, which I never thought that was something that was needed till I got out, till I saw that. That's not something that just is organically taught and learned in the corporate world,
Yeah.
in normal everyday America.
I learned so much in like college football, because in high school you're a raw talent, but you're not refined, because
Yeah.
most coaches aren't any good in high school. Let's be honest. So
Yeah.
I performed my way through high school, but then I got to college, and then coaching happened. Right.
Yeah.
And it was, I remember because I played quarterback. So, do a little play action, and I would look back to the running back, and I would stay looking backwards. And the coach had something, hit me on the head. He's like, "What are you looking back there for?" I was like, "The 300-pound guy who wants to take your head off is in front of you." I was just like, "Oh, football."
Yes, this might be important.
Avoid the 300-pound guy. And it's just little lessons like that. And the first time I learned football was in college, and we were running the scout team. So after practice, the coaches would be like, "Okay, you young freshmen, we're going to run a couple of plays." So Coach Sean walks up and says, "Okay, Mark, we're going to do play action. We're going to put this guy in motion. The corner's going to step over. The linebacker's going to step over. You're going to do play action. And right in the middle of the field, you're going to throw in this bubble, because everyone's going to clear out of that." And I was like, "Man, there's no way that's going to work." So then it happened, and all of a sudden, it's just like, "Oh," and it was sitting right there. And it was so shocking that I took a sack, because I was just like, "Holy shit, I just learned football."
Wait a second.
Yeah.
These other things have an effect on the rest of the players in the field?
That's amazing. Yeah. So, and I never forgot that lesson, because I realized what I didn't know.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a rhyme and reason to everything you're doing. And I learned football in college. And
that
it was crazy. But I realized that you have these great high school athletes who they go to college, and they don't thrive because they can't handle the speed of the game, either the actual foot speed or everybody's fast, right? So then you just have to be incrementally better. And some of the best players in the NFL, or best college players who didn't make it to the NFL, for whatever reason, couldn't adjust to the speed of the game. Or either in the wrong system or something. So when I see Tom Brady, I was talking to a gentleman who played for the Browns. He was a rookie, and Tom had won like his third Super Bowl. And Tom had dropped back, and this kid was like, "I've got a beat on him." He's like, "I got him." And he said, "Tom stepped 6 inches one way." He's like, "I might as well have been in Minnesota." He's like, I was completely out of the game. No way I could have said, the guy just moved 6 inches. And he's just like, "I'm just not good enough yet." And, Tom, over the course of time, was in the right system, and he was consistent, and he just studied the game, and he knew that kid was at the wrong angle. He's like, "Oh, well, dumb kid over here. Let me just move over 6 inches." And he's just like, I was completely, I might as well have been in another state. And,
it's being able to observe somebody that has mastered their profession so well that they can observe every single aspect. And there's parallels to it in the military. You see it in planning operations. You see it when you got a sister team that's got, younger, detachment commander, younger team sergeant, and maybe they don't have a warrant, and then you see their mission plan and like, "Oh, okay. Yeah.
Good luck.
Good luck with that brief. Good luck getting that approved." Like, it's not going to, but good luck with that. And all you did to get yours approved was just a single dot. Like, "Yep, I'm just going to put this right here because they're going to want to see IO. That they're going to want to see that, and that's what's going to get approved." Yeah, being able to witness somebody that knows like every single facet of their craft is just like holy shit, that's a whole different human being. Like, because they study the small basics. They study the small little aspects that a lot of us forget or we bypass.
Yeah, and, when the tier 1 guys would come back to us, like you said, they were just a wealth of knowledge, and they just saw the battlefield, or they saw the situation
Yeah.
at such a higher level that when they came back down to our level, they were just so good at the basics.
Yeah.
And it's just incremental. They were initially they had the attributes to make it through selection, but then they earned the right to do that job at that level.
Yep.
And they just refined and basics. And then they could go in and do pirouettes and all, hang from chandeliers and all the stuff you see in movies. But why?
Yeah.
Shoot, movie,
Yeah.
communicate,
Yeah. It's a misconception where people think that, they see something on TV and they think, oh, it's just all this tech, all this information, all these gadgets. It's like, no, dude, you're looking at it. It's a TV show.
Mhm.
Those are actors. The real dudes, the real tier 1, the cream of the crop, the best of the best, they have mastered the basics.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like it might look boring when you see an infantry kid doing it, where it's not sexy to look at Calf Scouts, it's not sexy to look at 11 Bravos, it's not cool to look at your basic. I'm like, they're still professionals.
Mhm.
They're doing the same things that the tier 1 dudes are masters at. Like masterly, just repeatedly work through the principles, and they add a little more flair and they add a couple new techniques.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they are masters of the basics.
Yeah.
When you walk away from that, like, then you're negating what made you the very best at it. And it's just the basics, the principles are all there. Very important to still always understand that the difference between somebody that is a professional in a career field is the same things that maybe you and your friends don't look at and find sexy anymore. And that's the basics.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. And I still don't go far past the basics with anything, be it driving, or if I go back to the range, I always start from dry firing, not sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not sexy at all. But you have to refine those things first and make sure you don't lose those, because you can't progress at the right level and be as proficient and efficient the higher you go, unless you have that foundation. So, I'm a huge proponent of, hey man, just do the basics, and do the basics so well that once they add things onto it and things in the South, you're going to revert to your lowest common denominator, which is
exactly.
Yeah.
Everybody looks at John Wick and they're like, I want to train that. I'm like, okay, well, for one, that's choreography.
Uh-huh.
You can go dance right now. You can go take a lesson in dancing like that. That'd be great. But if you want to be able to be, well versed and skilled when it comes to firearms, you go do the basics.
Mhm.
And the same can be applied to any profession.
Yeah.
It's just understanding that's what creates a Tom Brady.
Yeah. And when I went to grad school for the second time, it was still the same thing. Okay, you got to wake up, you got to get into a routine, you got to read. It's basic stuff. It's just at a higher level and faster. And what I found out at what differentiated USC from the Naval Postgraduate School was pace and volume. So the pace is fast, and they just fire hose on full blast, and you're like, all right, what the fuck just happened?
That's the uncomfortable questions. I'm like, dude, how did you manage that? Like, because I assumed that the volume and the speed was going to be an issue. Like, how bad was it in reality?
So it was worse than it should have been, because so much worse than it. So it was, if I was just going to school, that would have been one thing. But I was in a new city, LA, right? Not user friendly. And when you first get there, I was in a new profession, which I wasn't doing great at because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Right. And my family was in Virginia, and I was commuting back and forth, going through a divorce. And then my TBI and PTS was starting to manifest. So my invisible injuries were starting to take hold. And as a team guy, it's like, well, what do? We pile on more stuff. So I was like, I have a great
Bingo.
idea. I'm going to go to grad school. So when I say it was harder than it should have been, it's because I was struggling to such a degree that adding that one huge thing was like, it was daunting. Yeah. So
it's all of us. That's another common thread when it comes to our demographic. It's the last drop in the bucket, and then things start to fall apart. But we don't understand what's happening. I didn't even read about operator syndrome till I was already actively in treatment, already getting help.
Mm-hmm.
And I stumbled upon the white paper study on it, and it made perfect sense.
Yeah.
All of us are at such a high op tempo and constantly under a high stress load. That's what's keeping the bands together, like constantly being in stress and working. The moment we slow down
Mm-hmm.
and we downshift, and for me was when everything came to a stop during COVID, right after we came back from a deployment. That was the perfect mechanism for destruction and for everything to fall apart. Because it's like the analogy that I always use is like a race car doing laps and everything's stressed out.
Mm-hmm.
All the bearings are shot out. Every gasket's leaking, everything. The moment it pits, you're not starting that puppy back up.
Right.
It's done.
Yeah.
It's done. All of us had, everybody that I've talked to through this project has all said the same thing. It was like when I finally had a break from train ups, when I finally had a break from deployments, that's when everything started to manifest. And I didn't know how to cope with it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of guys turn to alcohol, they turn to other maladaptive coping devices, or they put more stress back onto themselves so they can ignore it.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So you're not alone. That's a common thread I've found.
Yeah.
We are the worst patients. We are the worst because we beat the system before. And we don't advocate for ourselves. We don't say like, hey, I'm going to go to the doctors. We lie about everything we've been through because we don't want to come off a team. We don't want to come off a rotation. So we're the worst demographic, but also come to find out the best. We have all endured TBI throughout the entirety of our course or entire of our train ups because constantly doing breachings. We're constantly doing work with explosives. And you've been concussed through jumps, through training incidents, and you don't go get help. So then you have no other option but to adapt and overcome.
Right.
If memory, like for me, the biggest thing that started falling apart was my cognitive ability to read, to function, like to remember things. So I just started carrying a bunch of notebooks. I just started writing everything out. And then I had a blue book for this, a black book, red. Red means secret. That gets locked up, chief. Like, yep. So many times I'd be like, where's my red notebook? Holy shit. Which one of you assholes took it? And they'd be like, chief, you just locked it up. I'm like, yeah, I know I did that.
You guys bad.
But we all develop things and ways to get around the deficiencies we have in our lives. My left eye wasn't even focusing right, and I would just cover that up. I'm like, well, okay, so left eye is not working so well. I'll figure out a way to only shoot with my right eye, so I'll cover that base with that, and then I'll worry about this later on down the road. But so many of us take all those issues that are happening and we just find ways to adapt and overcome them. And then by the time we finally go see a doctor, they're like, well, normally a person with all these issues that exhibiting all this stuff, we would say like, hey, you're going to go to hospital. You got to go inpatient and you got to stay inpatient for months and you're going to have at-home care. But you guys, you defy the system because you just develop frameworks around and scaffolding around the broken parts of your brain to like make things happen and be like, yeah, but I still can't read and I'm having trouble like figuring out how to get home, like driving back home that I can't remember. So can we fix that? Like, what were some of the issues that you were having trouble with?
So I couldn't I had the hardest time learning new things. Like so the information was in here,
Yeah.
but I just couldn't get it. And if I could finally get it, I couldn't articulate it. And,
Yeah.
I was at my worst. I was at Home Depot and I had a red book. This one, like I have notebooks everywhere still. So I had my notebook and I needed to buy blinds for the house because I had to buy a new house because, just divorced now.
Yeah.
And I'm in Home Depot and I had everything written down. I took the measurements of all the windows and stuff. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the thing and looking at the bin and I put it in the cart. And for some reason, I could not make those two things fit. And I had to do it 10 times. I think I did it 10 times. And I was with my daughter and she finally, she was at an age, she's like, okay, something's wrong. Cause if she had not been there as a 10-year-old, I'd still be at Home Depot today trying to figure that out. Like, no, I would have grown roots and everything. I just couldn't figure it out. So she got the book and everything was right. So she went and got each thing and grabbed it and escorted me out of Home Depot. I would still been there. I just could not get that math problem to work. And a couple years prior, you doing sniper stuff, you're doing a cold bore shot at 800 yards and bullet drop and, Coriolis effect. Like, oh yeah, hypotenuse to the square. And, and you're just doing it on the fly. But then something as simple as a Home Depot run, couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Could not do it. So then that was just like, okay, all right, finally something's wrong. So luckily I was at a research university and I just went and asked for help. I was like, look, I can't figure this out. Oh, we have a program for that. Go over to the.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's like, we got funding to do this research on traumatic brain injury. We'll put your name on the list. And I just went down each thing until I reached something that fit and addressed the problem. So went to the Intrepid Center of Excellence, NICO.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at least I had a starting point. I knew the why, right?
Yep.
So it was just you're not tenacious enough to beat it at that point when life slows down. You can't.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh man, I'm so glad you said that because that was my original frame of thought. I can control everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be damned if something or anyone's going to tell me that I am limited in my abilities. I can control it. Because that's what the biggest thing I had to get over was the fear that I couldn't control this, that what was happening inside my head was out of my control. Like I didn't want to give up that control. And then finally, like when everything went to the absolute worst and finally sitting in front of that neuropsychologist and like going through those tests, which are, if you haven't done it, they're pretty long. It's an all-day endeavor and they make you feel really dumb. You're sitting there. I'm like, I know I'm not stupid. I am serving at a high echelon of military service. Like I'm a Green Beret. Like I am not, like I am not this dumb. And then finally having that definitive proof where they're still like, okay, there's damage. And then it's like, and that feels like you've been hit multiple times by Carl Weathers, rest in peace, and Mike Tyson.
Ali, all of them.
Everybody's just taking their shot at just beating you down, and it breaks you down to hear that like I'm not in control of this thing, and it sucks. And if you're listening to this and you may have gotten that diagnosis and you may have gone through it, I'm here to tell you that in that moment, you do have to surrender and say, hey, like I can't go in there and fix that, but you can overcome it. When you are willing to advocate for yourself, you're willing to accept that you need help and you're willing to do the work. You're willing to go there every single day to whatever treatment center you go to, whatever program you enroll in, and you're willing to do the work, because it starts with being willing to go there. But then you have to be willing to do the work. And that's what changed for me, because they can send you to a number of places and you can go to the greatest doctors around. But if you're not willing to do the work, if you're not willing to push yourself and say that I can do this, then ultimately you're not going to get better.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you can just sit there and be somebody that identifies with a diagnosis. But just like I'm sitting here able to talk clearly now, because that's something I didn't have for a while, just stuttering, being angry, couldn't find my words. And I'm sure you can attest to it too, Mark. Like, once you do the work, once you see the progress, you realize, like, okay, like, maybe I won't always be able to know where my phone is or my keys, but I do know how to get home.
Yeah.
I do know that I carry an iPad now to take notes, and I'm able to friggin' have control of my life. But it just takes that ability, understanding that, like, hey, like, this is not going to knock me down. This isn't going to be a defining thing that I'm going to carry on and say, like, this is me. This is who I am. I'm not accept it. But yeah, it's something that definitely sucks when you see it and when your family sees it. Because my wife was seeing the struggle, and I didn't want to embrace it at first. I didn't want to say that, like, I couldn't control this, because I hung in. I was fighting it for a long time.
Yeah. And, you have to, once you find that treatment that works for you, you have to approach it as tenaciously as you did your former life. You have to be relentless on getting better. And it's easy to say, you know what, I'll just have one more drink, or I'll do one more thing that's not that will mask what I need to do. I'll self-medicate and I'll be fine. And then all of a sudden you're in a deeper hole with one more problem to solve. So if you can, my advice is just keep plugging away. You have everything it takes to get better. Just find what works for you, and it's going to take some. You're going to have some misses. Somebody's going to say, "Hey, go do this one thing," and you do it, and you're just like, "That was the absolute worst thing I've ever done." But then that could lead you to somewhere else. And finally, I've had 4 shoulder surgeries. Both rotators have been repaired.
Oof.
And after the second one, I was like, "Hey, doc, I do not want to be on synthetic heroin as I'm recovering."
Yeah.
I was like, "Give me 2 days worth of stuff, but I have to do something else." And he looked at me. He's like, "Well, yeah, just do yoga. Yoga's better than medicine anyway." I was like, "Get the fuck out of here. Breathe in and warrior 2, get out of here with that." So one day I had the opportunity to go to yoga. I was like, fine, happy baby. I'm like, I'm not doing that shit. Right. But I do it on Saturday, first thing in the morning, and it just resets everything. And I call the guy, still in contact with him. I was like, "Thanks so much for that advice." Because, doing my stand in the gym and stuff, that's great.
Yep.
But when my body's pissed off and angry and tight and I'm just frustrated, finishing off the week, just doing an hour in the yoga class and just recentering, like, that is the best medicine,
Yeah.
And
dude, I had the same experience, but it was mindfulness. I went to Intrepid Spirit, and again, it was on the idea that they were going to give me something to take away the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Going to give me either they're going to cut something out of me, they're going to use some laser, or prescribe me something to get rid of this pain. And I was already angry.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, I'll never forget this doctor. It's one of my favorite memories, because the person I was in that moment was just a pissed off, broken, and in chronic pain individual.
Mm-hmm.
That I only identified his life as being a Green Beret. Yeah. That's all that is. You're not going to take this from me. You're not going to take this career from me. You're going to give me something for pain, or you're going to cut the area that hurts out of me. And I remember the doctor's like, "Hey, we can do a lot of things. We can address a lot of things, but I need you to understand we may not be able to do anything for the pain." But I can provide you with a program that will teach you mindfulness, that will help you understand and have a better relationship with pain. And I'm just like, what the fuck are you offering me? This is bullshit. Like I went full from being like, yeah, from being like a pretty professional, like ready to receive any sort of help, to a completely like, fuck you, cut my feet off. I'm tired of dealing with pain. I'm done. You've got the metal tink tinks. I've seen you give it to people. Take my feet and give me those. And I just remember leaving there really angry. But thankfully, I went back and I followed through the treatment. I followed through and all the different modalities that they offered. And I was hesitant on mindfulness and I didn't touch it. I didn't deal with it. Months go by, things get worse. And eventually I have to go inpatient to a mental health treatment facility. And where you can't escape, you can't leave, you can't do anything. The one thing I found there was a book by John Kabat-Zinn called Wherever You Go, There You Are. And it's a book on mindfulness. And I read that book and it was like, again, trying to decipher ancient hieroglyphs because it doesn't read like an instruction manual. It was really hard to decipher. But that lady's voice was still there telling me like, hey, this is something that can help you with pain. And it was the same thing. I finally sat down and I practiced mindfulness. And just like yoga is therapeutic and it helps you deal with trauma, mindfulness helps you deal with pain and remind you that the only thing that matters, the only thing you can actually truly affect and be in is the present moment. And that was a definitive moment in my journey to getting better. I understood it. Conventional medicine's great, but you got to be able to embrace every modality, take every option. And if you're like me and somebody's offered yoga or mindfulness and you've been really harsh and bitter about it, be open to it, because I am here right now. Like, I'm a certified instructor now. I believe in it so much because of what it's given me in my life. It's no different than when I was taking copious amounts of pain medication, because it's changed my whole relationship with pain. It's understanding that pain comes and goes. You touch it and you let it go. It's something that every veteran right now from the G1 area, we're in pain. Chronic pain is one of the biggest things, but we can overcome it, and we don't have to take synthetic heroin, and we don't have to take these compounds that are addictive and will actually, like, in the long run, shit, even Motrin is not good for us.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that till another doctor was like, how many times were you prescribed 800 milligram Motrin? I was like, Doc, I don't know. How many times did I drink water?
Yeah.
It's like
candy.
Yeah, it's one of the things that was administered to us like all the friggin' time. And then come to find out, once you hit, 39, you go through these evaluations with doctors and they're like, hey, we really need to look at all your systems because that much Motrin in your system is not good. I was like, well, what can it affect? And they're like, oh, it can affect your reproduction. It can affect your liver. I'm like, well, what can't it affect?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I and from a young age, for some reason, my dad was just like, I'm not taking any damn medicine. So I just don't like taking medicine. And, the cool thing about yoga for all you single guys, you'll probably be the only dude in class. So, just say
added bonus. Yo, Mark, I can't thank you enough for being here. Before I let you go, I know I've been eating up a lot of your time, and I'm grateful for sharing your wisdom with the audience. Your book highlights your journey, but it also highlights transition, which is one of the most daunting tasks any service member will do, whether you're a Navy SEAL, Ranger, Green Beret, MARSOC Raider, or 92 Golf. Like all of us are at some point going to walk away from the military, and it can seem like a very daunting mission, but it can also be a great journey in understanding your purpose, your passion, and your own true identity. What are some words of advice to anybody that's out there right now going through their transition journey?
So I'll break it down in professionally, when you're let's say you're at a fundraising event, right? And it's for the soft community, and somebody walks up to you and says, "Hey, do you need any help?" Swallow your pride and say yes. The best relationship I've had in a long time was a gentleman who came up to me and said, "Hey, Mark, are you excited about, you're an officer, you have your MBA, you've been a SEAL for 20 years, are you excited about retiring?" I was like, "I'm actually terrified because I have no idea what I'm good at." So this gentleman's like, "Okay, no, we're not doing that." So he said, "You're going to come out to LA and we're going to make sure you're taken care of." First thing I said in my mind was like, "Well, why would you do that? You don't even know me." I kind of got defensive, right? But I was like, "Why am I pissed off?" It's because I offered to help.
Immediately go into the fight stance.
So, but when you're at these events, right, the people who come up to you or at the event, they are excited to help.
Yeah.
And if you are at the level of in the soft community, and somebody walks up to you and says, "Hey, do you need help?" and you say, "No, I'm good," they're going to be like, "Well, this guy's at the top of his game. If he says he's good, I'm just going to the next person."
Yep.
So whenever you're in a target-rich environment, which those are, almost everybody there either can help you financially or put you in touch with somebody or something that you don't have access to. And turns out my guy was so well connected that he's like, "All right, he's my guy and we're going to take care of him." And so that's professional, or professionally speaking. But if you are personally speaking, swallow your pride, understand that you are not the same person coming out of that churn as you were going into it. And you there's help out there because you need the help. So do all the research you can, because once we find out the why or have a problem to solve, we're tenacious about finding all the information we can, and just take that first step of progress towards, hey, okay, cognitively I'm not there, something's going wrong, I've had wave propagated TBI or whatever injuries you've got, we have it. You can't do this job for a significant amount of time and not have something going on cognitively. And PTS manifests differently in us because the screening process we went through, we're shielded. So once we have symptoms of PTS, we're so far past the norm because of what we've been through. So your family sees it, your kids see it, your friends see it. You're not the same, and there's so much help out there now. There's very little stigma out there for getting help. So take advantage of all the opportunities that are out there to get better, and just formulate a plan and start off with like, okay, I need to get better. And then just start taking your steps towards it and figure out what your method is. Yours was notebooks everywhere.
No.
Mine was identifying the problem and realizing that I was in an environment that provided a lot of help on campus where I was working 8 hours a day. And, if you stick with it long enough, you're going to come out of that valley. And then with what skill set you have and the type of person you are, the peak after you've come out of that valley is, you can't even imagine sometimes how great it's going to be. So that's my advice. Just get the help you need, because we all need it at some point. It could be a small amount of help, or it could be a Herculean effort to get the help. But get the help.
The resources are out there.
Yeah.
There are so many people that want to help, that want to be of service. because they realize that for the past 20 years, individuals like us and you listening have given willingly and have put yourself on that line, willing to, fight the good fight. And it's time for you to take advantage of all the resources. Don't be ashamed of it. Get better. Like we always say on the show, like we get through this together. So reach out if you need assistance getting plugged in with a community or getting a list of organizations that can help you. Hit us up on our website or hit us up on socials. We're always able to check our messages. Mark, thank you for being here today. What's the name of the website where we can check out, and the name of the book as well?
So the website is themarkgreene.com, and the book is Unsealed, and it is my journey towards transitions. And it's really, I try to hit the gamut of transitions, so hopefully it'll resonate with somebody in some way that says, yeah, I've experienced that, and I'm using the SEAL experience or the SOF experience to say, hey, somebody at the top of their game or close to the top of their game struggled, and I'm not by myself in this thing. And that's true. Like you said, there's a network out there for you. Find your tribe and get back to it. And, realize that you're not going to recreate that locker room again.
Yeah.
And that's okay. The SEAL locker room, I'm never going to find it again. The Green Beret locker room, you're not going to recreate it. But just because you can't recreate that locker room doesn't mean you can't recreate a different one. And
exactly.
Yeah. And mine was my USC tribe. And I mean, that place I love it so much because it was such a place of healing for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So helps out there. So get after it.
Heck yeah, Mark. Thank you so much for being here. Pick up the new book, Unsealed.
On my
Check
website.
You all out next time. And the website. Yeah,
on the website and then on Amazon. And if you get it on Amazon, do me a favor and leave a review so it pushes the algorithm to get it out to more people.
Awesome. And if you're wondering where you can find all this information, it'll be in the episode description when I publish this on Spotify. And then check it out. Go to Amazon, buy it. And also, Mark, what are your social handles?
Oh,
are you on Instagram?
I am on Instagram. It's everything's at the Mark Greene. So we changed everything so all the cavemen can find it.
Well, don't worry, because we'll put that also on the episode description and on YouTube when we publish this. Mark, thank you so much for being here again. And to all of you listening, get help. Take care of yourself. Remember, you deserve it. And we get through this together. Until next time, guys, take care. If you like what we're doing and you're enjoying the show, don't forget to share us, like us, subscribe, and head on over to our Patreon where you can be part of our community and get access to all of our episodes as soon as they drop. And remember, we get through this together. Take care.